True real-life story, Part 2. 3 days passed in an uneasy truce. Maya and James moved around each other carefully, like dancers afraid of stepping on each other's toes. They spoke about safe topics, the weather, a funny story about one of Maya's students, the neighbor's new dog that barked all night. But they avoided the stack of bills that Maya had finally placed on the kitchen counter, a silent reminder of the conversation they still needed to have. Today was different, though. Today was their anniversary. 7 years of marriage that deserved to be celebrated, financial troubles or not. Maya had woken up early to hang a string of fairy lights around their dining room and place a small wrapped gift by James's coffee mug. It wasn't much, just a watch strap to replace the worn one on the timepiece his grandfather had given him. But she hoped it would show that despite everything, she still cared. James had kissed her cheek when he found it. A brief moment of tenderness that gave Maya hope. "Thank you," he'd said, his voice softer than it had been in weeks. "I've got something for you too, but you'll have to wait until tonight." Now, as evening approached, Maya stood in front of their bedroom mirror, smoothing down the front of her favorite dress. She'd bought it 3 years ago for a friend's wedding, a deep burgundy wrap dress with tiny gold flowers that caught the light when she moved. James had always said the color looked beautiful against her dark skin. She hoped wearing it tonight might remind him of happier times. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection, pinning up one last curl. "It's just dinner, just your husband." But the knot in her stomach told a different story. It felt like more than dinner. It felt like a crossroads. When she walked into the dining room, Maya was surprised to find James had made an effort too. The table was set with their wedding china, dishes they only used for special occasions, and a small bouquet of flowers sat in a vase between 2 lit candles. James himself was standing by the table in a button-up shirt and slacks, looking almost as nervous as she felt. "You look nice," he said, his eyes softening as he took in her appearance. "So do you," she replied, smiling despite her nerves. "What's all this?" James shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "It's our anniversary. I thought we should do something special." He pulled out her chair, a gentlemanly gesture that reminded Maya of their early dates. As she sat down, she noticed a small gift bag beside her plate.
"Can I open it now?"
"Go ahead," James said, taking his own seat across from her. Inside the bag was a small jewelry box. Maya's heart skipped as she opened it to find a pair of simple gold hoop earrings, not expensive, but exactly the style she loved. "They're beautiful," she said, genuinely touched. "Thank you." "I ordered takeout from Antonio's," James said, gesturing to the covered dishes on the table. "And I picked up a cake from that bakery you like." Maya felt a rush of affection as she looked at the effort he'd made. Maybe things weren't as broken as she feared. "This is perfect," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. For a while it felt like old times. They talked about the early days of their relationship, their disastrous first date when James's car broke down in the rain, the time Maya's father had interrogated James for 2 hours before giving his blessing. They laughed about the tiny apartment they'd shared before buying their house, where the shower only had 2 settings, freezing or scalding. "Remember when the ceiling leaked right onto our bed?" Maya said, giggling at the memory. "We had to sleep under an umbrella for 3 days before the landlord fixed it. And you insisted we could make it romantic by pretending we were camping," James added, his eyes crinkling with genuine amusement. As they finished their dinner and James went to get the cake from the kitchen, Maya felt herself relax for the first time in weeks. Maybe they would be okay after all. Maybe they could find their way back to being a team. But as James returned with the cake, a small round chocolate one with "Happy Anniversary" written in elegant script, his expression had changed. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by something harder, more closed off. "Is everything okay?" Maya asked, sensing the shift. James set the cake down on the table with a little too much force. "I got a call while I was in the kitchen." Guess who it was? Maya shook her head, confused by his sudden change in demeanor. "It was the insurance company," James continued, his voice tight. "Apparently our policy was canceled today because the payment is now 4 days late." Maya's stomach dropped. The car insurance bill she'd put off paying. In the chaos of the past few days, she'd forgotten about it completely. "James, I'm sorry. I meant to pay it, but with everything going on, we need to be even more careful with our finances." James cut in, his voice rising. Do you know what happens if we get pulled over now? Or worse, if we get in an accident? We could lose everything, Maya. I know, Maya said, feeling defensive even though she knew he was right.
I'll call them first thing tomorrow.
I'll pay the late fee. That's not the point. James slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. The point is, you said you would handle it. And you didn't. Just like you said you would pay the electric bill last month, and I had to cover it at the last minute. That's not fair, Maya argued, her own anger flaring. I've been putting extra money aside in case things get worse. I've been trying to protect us. Protect us? James scoffed. By hiding money and neglecting our responsibilities? That's not protection, Maya. That's deception. The word hung in the air between them, ugly and accusatory. Maya felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes but blinked them away. I wasn't trying to deceive you. I was scared. And you think I'm not? James's voice cracked slightly. You think I'm not terrified every time I walk into that job site, wondering if today's the day they'll tell me I'm done? You think I don't lie awake at night trying to figure out how to keep our heads above water? Maya had no answer for that. Of course he was scared too. How had they ended up so disconnected that they couldn't even share their fears with each other? We're supposed to be partners, James continued, echoing his words from days earlier. But it feels like you don't trust me to handle this, like you're preparing for me to fail. That's not true, Maya protested. I'm just trying to be practical. Practical would be paying our bills on time so we don't end up with fees and cancellations on top of everything else. They stared at each other across the table, the anniversary cake sitting between them like a mockery of celebration. All the warmth and nostalgia from earlier had evaporated, replaced by the same tension that had been suffocating their home for weeks. Maya tried once more. James, please, can we just enjoy our anniversary? We can deal with this tomorrow. Enjoy our anniversary? James repeated, his voice hollow. While our lives are falling apart? While you're hiding things from me? Something in Maya snapped. I'm not hiding anything. I'm trying to save us from disaster. Why can't you see that? Because all I can see is that I can't trust my own wife to be honest with me. The word struck Maya like a physical blow. She pushed back from the table and stood up, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. That's not fair. I've been beside you for 7 years. I've supported you through everything. How dare you say you can't trust me over one missed payment? James stood too, his face flushed with anger. It's not about the payment. It's about you making decisions without me. Hiding money, lying about bills. I never lied. A lie by omission is still a lie. They were shouting now, years of unspoken frustrations pouring out all at once. In the small dining room, their voices seemed to bounce off the walls, growing louder with each exchange. The fairy lights Maya had hung that morning twinkled obliviously above them, casting a warm glow over their cold anger. You know what? Maybe you're right, Maya said, her voice bitter. Maybe we aren't partners anymore. Maybe we haven't been for a long time. Something flickered in James's eyes then, pain or fear or both. For a moment, Maya thought he might reach for her, might try to bridge the gap between them. Instead, he did something neither of them expected. His hand moved toward the anniversary cake, and in one swift motion, he picked it up and threw it directly at Maya. Time seemed to slow down as the cake flew through the air. Maya barely had time to raise her hands before it hit her, chocolate frosting splattering across her burgundy dress, chunks of cake falling to the floor at her feet. A streak of icing slid down her cheek, landing with a soft plop on her collarbone. The room went completely silent. Even their breathing seemed to have stopped. James stood frozen, his empty hand still raised, his face a mask of shock at his own actions. Maya remained perfectly still, frosting dripping from her fingers, the dress she'd chosen so carefully now ruined. For what felt like an eternity, neither of them moved or spoke. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, counting off seconds that stretched into infinity. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights briefly illuminating the tableau through the window. Two people who loved each other, now standing as strangers amid the wreckage of their celebration. The sunshine poured through the kitchen window of the small suburban house that Maya and James Thompson called home. 7 years of marriage had filled their modest 3-bedroom with memories. Photos from their honeymoon trip to Florida, the handmade quilt from Maya's grandmother, and the slightly crooked shelf James had built during his DIY phase. But lately, the warm home they'd created together felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that seemed to follow them from room to room. Maya stood at the kitchen counter, her fingers tapping nervously against the stack of envelopes she'd been avoiding all week. Bills. So many bills. The mortgage payment, the car insurance, the credit card statement with a balance that made her stomach twist into knots. She pushed a strand of dark curly hair behind her ear and sighed, glancing at the clock on the microwave. James would be home in 20 minutes and she still hadn't figured out what to tell him. Maybe I should just show him the numbers, she whispered to herself, but the thought made her chest tighten. Their last 3 conversations about money had turned into arguments, each one worse than the one before. The sound of the garage door opening sent a jolt of panic through her body. James was home early. Quickly, Maya shuffled the bills into a drawer and grabbed a pot to fill with water. She'd make pasta tonight. Simple, cheap, and it would give her something to do with her hands while they talked. "Hey," James said as he walked through the door, setting his lunchbox on the counter. His construction uniform was covered in dust, and the lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they had been that morning. "You're cooking?" "Just some pasta," Maya replied, forcing a smile. "How was work?" James's shoulders slumped as he washed his hands at the kitchen sink. 2 more guys got laid off today. Mark and Dion. Both been with the company longer than me. Maya felt her heart sink. For 3 months now, James's construction company had been cutting back, project by project. Each week brought news of another friend cleaning out their locker. "Did they say anything to you?" she asked carefully. "Not directly," James said, drying his hands on a dish towel. "But I overheard the boss talking about the River Heights project being put on hold. That's the one I'm supposed to manage starting next month." He opened the refrigerator, staring inside without really seeing anything. "Without that project, I don't know." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They both knew what it meant. Without that project, James might be next. "We'll figure it out," Maya said, though she wasn't sure how convincing she sounded. "I've been talking to the principal about picking up some extra tutoring hours after school. The pay isn't great, but it's something." James closed the refrigerator door a little harder than necessary. "You're already working too much. Coming home with stacks of papers to grade every night, dealing with those kids all day. You're exhausted." "I don't mind," Maya said, stirring the pasta with more focus than it required. "Teaching those kids is rewarding, and the extra money would help us build our savings." "Savings?" James scoffed. "We need to focus on paying down debt first. Those credit card interest rates are killing us." He ran a hand over his face, the stubble making a scratching sound against his palm. "I saw the new statement came in the mail yesterday." "How bad is it?" Maya stirred the pasta more vigorously. "It's not great, but I think we should prioritize having cash on hand right now. Just in case." "Just in case what?" "In case I lose my job." His voice had an edge to it now. "Is that what you're planning for?" "I'm not planning for anything," Maya said, feeling defensive. "I'm just trying to be smart about our situation. My parents always taught me to have at least 3 months of expenses saved up." "Yeah. Well, my parents taught me that debt is like a house on fire. You don't save water in buckets while the flames get bigger. You put the fire out first." James opened the drawer where they kept the takeout menus, then slammed it shut again. "Did you at least pay the car insurance?" "It was due yesterday." Maya's hand froze on the spoon. The car insurance. It was one of the bills she'd been staring at earlier. The one she'd decided to delay paying until her next paycheck hit their account. She'd been putting money aside instead, building a secret emergency fund in case James's fears came true. "I was going to take care of it tomorrow," she said quietly. "Tomorrow?" James's voice rose. "Maya, we talked about this. 1 late payment and our rates go up. We can't afford that right now." "It's just 1 day," Maya argued. "And we have more important things to worry about than 1 day." "Like what?" "What's more important than keeping our finances in order right now? Like having a safety net." Maya felt her own voice rising to match his. "What happens if they do lay you off? How will we pay for anything if we've thrown all our cash at bills and have nothing left?" The timer on the stove beeped loudly, making them both jump. Maya turned away to drain the pasta, grateful for the momentary distraction. Steam rose from the colander, fogging her glasses and giving her an excuse to wipe at her eyes. Behind her, she heard James take a deep breath. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but still strained. "I understand wanting to be prepared, but hiding bills from me isn't the answer." "I wasn't hiding anything," Maya said, though part of her knew that wasn't entirely true. "I was trying to figure out the best approach. The best approach is being honest with each other." James leaned against the counter, suddenly looking very tired. "We're supposed to be partners, Maya. How can we get through this if we're not on the same page?" Maya nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. He was right, and she knew it. But fear had been driving her decisions lately. Fear of what would happen if their financial situation got worse. Fear of watching James struggle with his pride if he lost his job. "You're right," she admitted. "I should have talked to you first." She set the colander down and turned to face him. "I'm scared, James. I'm scared of what's coming." Something in James's expression softened. "I'm scared too," he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. "But we've been through tough times before." Maya thought back to their first year of marriage, when they'd lived in that tiny apartment with the leaky ceiling and furniture they'd found on the street. They'd been broke then too, but somehow it had felt different, more like an adventure they were having together, less like a cliff they were about to fall off. "Remember that first Christmas?" she asked, a small smile forming despite the tension, "when we couldn't afford a tree so you made one out of cardboard?" James's mouth twitched with the beginning of a smile. "And you wrapped empty boxes for decoration because we couldn't afford ornaments." "We were happy," Maya said, the realization hitting her anew. "Even with nothing. We were on the same team back then," James said quietly. "That's what's different now." The words hung in the air between them, painful but true. Somewhere along the way, they'd stopped working together and started working against each other, each trying to solve their problems alone instead of as a couple. "I don't want to fight about money anymore," Maya said. "It's tearing us apart." James nodded, crossing the kitchen to stand beside her. For a moment she thought he might reach for her hand, but instead, he picked up the plates she'd set out for dinner. "Let's just eat. We can figure out a plan after." As they sat down at their small kitchen table, the pasta growing cold between them, Maya couldn't help but feel that they were at a crossroads. The way they handled this financial strain would either strengthen their marriage or break it apart. True real-life story, Part 3. In the silence that followed, Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Chocolate frosting dripped from her hair onto her shoulders, and she could feel cake crumbs sliding down the front of her dress. The smell of sugar and vanilla filled the air, a sickeningly sweet contrast to the bitterness of the moment. 7 years. 7 years of building a life together, and it had come to this. Cake thrown in anger across their anniversary dinner table. If anyone had told her on their wedding day that they would end up here, she would have laughed in disbelief. James stood with his hands still half raised, his face drained of color. The moment his fingers had released the cake, regret had crashed over him like a wave. What had he done? This wasn't him. He had never, in all their years together, not even in their worst arguments, resorted to throwing things. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Maya slowly raised one hand to her face and wiped a streak of frosting from her cheek. She looked at it for a moment, rubbing the chocolate between her fingers. Then she did something completely unexpected. She pulled out her dining chair and sat back down. "This isn't about the insurance bill, is it?" she asked quietly. James blinked, clearly thrown by her calm response. He had expected screaming, crying, maybe her storming out or throwing something back at him. Her quiet question knocked the wind out of his anger, leaving him deflated and confused. "What?" Maya gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, James." He hesitated, then slowly lowered himself into the chair, perched on its edge as if ready to flee at any moment. His hands trembled slightly as he placed them on the table. "I asked if this is really about the insurance bill," Maya repeated, her voice steady despite the cake still dripping from her hair. "Because I don't think it is, and I don't think it's about me putting money aside either. I think there's something else going on and we need to talk about it." "Really talk?" James stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Of all the reactions he had expected, this wasn't one of them. Where was the anger, the hurt, the outrage that should follow what he had just done? Aren't you mad?" he finally managed to ask. "I'm furious," Maya said simply. "And hurt and embarrassed, and about a dozen other feelings I can't even name right now." She picked up a napkin and wiped more frosting from her face. "But yelling at you won't fix whatever's broken between us, and walking out that door won't make these feelings go away. So let's try something different. Let's try honesty." James swallowed hard, the lump in his throat making it difficult to speak. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I don't know what came over me. I know, Maya said. That's why I know this isn't just about a missed payment. Something else is eating at you, and it's been eating at you for months now. She leaned forward, ignoring the cake that smeared against the table. Tell me what's really wrong, James. No more dancing around it. Just tell me. The gentleness in her voice broke something loose inside him. James covered his face with his hands, his shoulders beginning to shake. At first, Maya thought he was laughing, a hysterical response to the absurdity of the situation. But when he lowered his hands, she saw tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm going to lose my job, he said, his voice cracking. It's not a possibility anymore. It's happening. I've known for 2 weeks. Maya felt her stomach drop. 2 weeks? Why didn't you tell me? James wiped roughly at his eyes. Because I was ashamed. Because I've been trying to find another position before I had to tell you that I failed. That I couldn't provide for us anymore. Failed? Maya repeated, genuinely confused. James, losing a job during company layoffs isn't failing. It's just bad luck. It's more than that, he insisted. I was supposed to be the one who took care of things. My dad worked the same construction job for 30 years. Never missed a day. Never got laid off. And here I am. Can't even make it 7 years without the company deciding I'm expendable. Maya's heart ached at the pain in his voice. All this time she'd been worried about their financial situation, but she hadn't seen the deeper wound. The blow to his sense of self-worth, his identity as a provider. When do they let you go? She asked gently. End of the month. They're giving me a small severance package, but it won't last long. He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. I've been sending out applications everywhere, but construction is slow all over right now. Nobody's hiring. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. Despite everything, the argument, the cake, the weeks of tension, the feel of his skin against hers was still familiar, still home. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. We could have faced this together. I kept thinking I'd find something, James said, that I'd have good news to balance out the bad. And then when you started talking about saving instead of paying bills, I guess I felt like you were already preparing for me to fail. That's not what I was doing, Maya said, squeezing his hand. I was trying to build a safety net for us, not just for you. I should have been honest about that too. For several minutes they sat in silence, hands linked across the table. The candles had burned low, casting long shadows across the dining room. Outside rain had begun to fall, tapping gently against the windows. So what happens now? James finally asked. I threw cake at my wife on our anniversary. I've been lying about losing my job. Our insurance is canceled. We're a mess, Maya. Despite everything, Maya felt her lips curve into a small smile. Yeah, we kind of are. Her unexpected response startled a laugh out of James. How are you being so calm about this? Maya thought about it for a moment. Because underneath all of this, the money problems, the secrets, even the cake in my hair, we're still us. We're still the same people who slept under an umbrella when our ceiling leaked. We're still the couple who built a life from nothing, and I think we're worth fighting for. She stood up and walked around the table, cake still clinging to her dress. When she reached James, she held out her hand. Come on, where are we going? He asked, taking her hand hesitantly. To the kitchen. We're going to make a pot of coffee, and then we're going to lay all our cards on the table. Every bill, every account, every worry. No more secrets. James looked up at her, his expression a mixture of confusion and awe. Just like that? You're not going to throw something back at me? You're not going to leave? Maya shook her head. Throwing things doesn't solve problems, and leaving is easy. Staying and working through the hard stuff, that's the real challenge. She tugged gently on his hand. Besides, you've seen me at my worst too, remember? Remember when I got food poisoning on our honeymoon and you had to take care of me for 3 days in that tiny hotel bathroom? A genuine smile broke through James's troubled expression. How could I forget? I had to buy a new toothbrush after that trip. And did you leave? Maya asked. Of course not, because that's what marriage is, Maya said simply. Being there for the ugly parts. And this, us fighting about money, you throwing cake, me hiding bills, this is just another ugly part we have to get through. Slowly, James stood up. He reached out tentatively and brushed a chunk of cake from Maya's shoulder. I really am sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what came over me. I know, Maya said. And we'll talk about that too. But first, coffee and bills. As they walked to the kitchen together, Maya felt something shift between them. Not a complete healing, but a beginning. The path forward wouldn't be easy. There would be hard conversations, tight budgets, and probably more arguments. But for the first time in months, it felt like they were facing it as a team again. In the kitchen, Maya wiped more frosting from her face and looked down at her ruined dress. I should probably change first, James nodded, then hesitated. Maya, thank you, he said softly. For not giving up on us. Maya smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes despite the cake in her hair and the uncertainty ahead. Never, she promised. Some things are worth fighting for, even when they're messy. Maya came back downstairs wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, her hair wrapped in a towel. She'd scrubbed most of the cake from her skin, though a faint smell of chocolate still followed her. In the kitchen, she found James had cleared the dining room mess and was sitting at the counter, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in front of him along with a stack of papers. I found all the bills, he said as she sat down beside him. And I printed our bank statements for the last 6 months. Maya nodded, reaching for one of the coffees. I have something to show you, too. She pulled a folded envelope from her pocket and slid it across the counter to him. This is what I've been doing with some of the money. James opened the envelope and pulled out a bank statement from an account he didn't recognize. His eyebrows rose as he read the balance, nearly $4,000. You've saved all this? He asked, surprised. Maya nodded. I opened the account 3 months ago, when the first round of layoffs happened at your company. I've been putting a little aside from each paycheck, plus all the money from tutoring. She wrapped her hands around her mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. I should have told you about it. I didn't want you to think I was expecting the worst. But you were preparing for it, James said. No accusation in his voice, just understanding. I was preparing for anything, Maya corrected gently. Good or bad? James looked at the statement again, then at the pile of bills in front of them. This changes things. With your savings, we could actually stay afloat for a couple of months while I look for work. That's the idea, Maya said, pulling one of the bills toward her, the overdue car insurance notice. But we need to be smart about it, starting with getting this paid before they charge us reinstatement fees on top of everything else. For the next 2 hours, they spread their financial life on the kitchen counter. Every bill, every account, every debt. No more secrets, no more separate plans. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, especially when James saw just how much interest they were paying on their credit cards. We've been throwing money away, he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. If we'd tackled this debt sooner, we can't change the past, Maya reminded him. Let's focus on what we can do now. Together, they created a new budget. With James's job ending soon, they needed to cut expenses wherever possible. The streaming services they barely used, the gym membership James had visited twice in the past year, the weekly takeout that had become a habit rather than a treat, all of it went on the chopping block. What about your tutoring? James asked, making notes on their budget sheet. Could you pick up more hours? Maya considered it. Probably. The school year's in full swing and there's always parents looking for extra help for their kids. She took a sip of her now lukewarm coffee. I could also ask about substitute teaching. It's not steady, but when they call, it pays better than tutoring. James nodded, adding it to their income projections. And I'll keep looking for construction work, but maybe I need to widen my search. I could do warehouse work, delivery driving, whatever it takes to bring in something while I look for another position in my field. They worked side by side, the clock on the microwave ticking past midnight, then 1, then 2. Despite the late hour, Maya felt more awake than she had in weeks. There was something freeing about finally having everything out in the open, about working together instead of against each other. Look at this, James said eventually, turning their notebook so Maya could see the figures he'd calculated. If we stick to this budget, your savings would last us almost 4 months. That's with paying all the essential bills and minimum payments on the credit cards. And if you find even part-time work, we could stretch it further, Maya added, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in months. This could actually work, James. He reached over and squeezed her hand. It's a good plan. But there's something else we need to talk about, and it's not about money. Maya tensed slightly. What is it? What happened earlier? James said, his voice dropping. The cake. I've never done anything like that before. I know, Maya said quietly. And I'll never do anything like it again, he continued, his voice firm. But I think I need to talk to someone about how I've been handling stress. The way I bottled everything up, the way I exploded. Maya nodded, a lump forming in her throat. She'd been thinking the same thing, but hadn't known how to bring it up. There's a counseling center at the college where I tutor. They offer sessions on a sliding scale. We could both go, actually. I haven't exactly been perfect in the communication department either. Relief flooded James's face. You'd go with me? Of course I would. We're in this together, remember? She gave him a small smile. Besides, everyone needs help sometimes. There's no shame in that. James looked down at their hands, still intertwined on the counter. I was raised to believe that men don't ask for help. That we solve our own problems, take care of our families, never show weakness. He shook his head. But trying to live up to that nearly cost me my marriage tonight. Old habits are hard to break, Maya said. My parents never talked about money. It was always this secretive, stressful thing. No wonder I started hiding bills and squirreling away money without telling you. We're a piece of work, aren't we? James said, a rueful smile on his face. A work in progress, Maya corrected. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first hint of dawn was lightening the sky. They had been talking all night, but somehow Maya didn't feel tired. Exhausted emotionally, yes, but also lighter, as if a weight she'd been carrying for months had finally been set down. James stood up and stretched. We should try to get a couple hours of sleep before morning. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. What's tomorrow? Maya asked, gathering up the papers they'd spread across the counter. Well, today technically, James said, glancing at the clock. I need to call the insurance company first thing. Get our policy reinstated. Then I thought maybe we could go to that counseling center you mentioned, see if they have any appointments available. Maya nodded, touched by his readiness to follow through. And I'll talk to the school about extra tutoring hours. They moved around the kitchen, putting away their coffee mugs, organizing the bills into neat piles. Their movements were synchronized, comfortable, familiar. For the first time in months, they weren't orbiting each other warily, but working in tandem. As they headed upstairs, James paused at the bottom step. Maya? She turned to look at him. Thank you, he said simply. For not giving up. For seeing past what I did to what I needed. Maya thought about the moment the cake had hit her, the shock and hurt she'd felt. It would have been easy to storm out, to let that be the breaking point of their marriage. But something inside her had recognized that beneath James's anger was fear, beneath his outburst was pain. And she had chosen to see the man she loved rather than the mistake he'd made. You know what my grandmother used to say? She replied. She said that love isn't what you feel when everything's perfect. It's what you choose when everything's falling apart. James climbed the step between them and pulled her into a hug, his arms wrapping tightly around her. She leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and familiar. I choose us, he whispered into her hair, every day through whatever comes next. I choose us. Maya closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him, coffee and laundry detergent and home. I choose us too. As they climbed the stairs together, Maya knew that their problems weren't solved. The coming months would be difficult. There would be tight budgets and job rejections and probably more arguments. There would be days when the stress would feel overwhelming. But something fundamental had shifted between them. They had seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay, to work through it together. They had rediscovered what they'd always known but somehow forgotten along the way, that they were strongest when they faced life's challenges as a team.